Hello all, this is James Johnson, aka Sulfurblade, and I am here with another video. In this video, I want to talk about my hypothetical perfect MMORPG and what it would look like if if I could steal the game components of various MMOs that have already existed and patch them together into one grand MMO. Just how might that appear? So, my perfect MMO, I would very first off start with taking the resource system from Star Wars Galaxies. In my opinion, the resource system from Star Wars Galaxies was one of the most incredible and innovative game systems that we've ever seen in an MMORPG. And many of you may not be at all familiar with what I'm talking about, as Star Wars Galaxies was a long time ago these days, and not all of us are elderly. So to elaborate a bit more on Star Wars Galaxy's resource system, you could have resources that would spawn on planet for a given period of time. So let's just take an example. We'll say copper. So the copper, and there might be two different coppers spawning on, say, planet Tatooine. So you go to Tatooine and you want some copper, right? And Tatooine happens to have two different coppers spawning at this point in time. One is about to stop. One is at the end of its time period. It's probably going to vanish any day now. You don't really know how long they're going to last. And then the other copper has just appeared and it's just showed up. And every resource within Star Wars Galaxy's system had various different stats. So not all copper was the same. For example, one copper could be very good at conducting electricity. Another copper could be far more malleable. Another copper could be far harder and less malleable. And so the different attributes of these coppers would give them different statistics. And obviously, copper would be a baseline resource used in various different crafts. And if a craft needed a malleable copper, then you would want to use copper that's rated highly in its malleability, where another craft might need something that's, well, less malleable, a copper that is harder and denser and less malleable. So depending on the resources that you've acquired through the years, you could ultimately make very different outcomes of the craft that you're trying to make, depending upon what is available at that time period, what you've saved in your stockpiles, etc. So that was an amazing system that we haven't seen anything like it since, and I'm shocked that we haven't, because of just how innovative and great it was. Which leads me on to crafting. Again, I believe Star Wars Galaxies has the best crafting system ever, bar none, in any MMORPG ever. And so with the combination of its resource system and its crafting, the two went together flawlessly. I could imagine no crafting and resource system that would be better for my perfect MMO than SWG's. I just want you guys to know that my perfect MMO is not an MMO in which there's lots of combat. I envision a perfect MMO as being a life simulator, as being another place where you can go live your life. And that the people inside of that life simulator behave with similar virtues and similar ethics and similar desires as they do in the real world. And in the real world, you don't have people running around trying to grief everybody. You don't have people trying to steal everything. You don't have people trying to kill everybody nonstop 24/7. And so for me, the perfect MMO is going to represent that type of an atmosphere. So action combat, fancy graphics combat, nonstop combat that involves killing and killing and killing and killing, not going to be in my perfect MMO. Sorry, guys. All right, with that being said, we're moving on to animal husbandry. Animal husbandry, if you're not aware, is the domestication and breeding of animals. Horses, cows, sheep, things of this nature. And what game did this better than any other game to date? Worm Online. Worm Online had the best animal husbandry system that you could find in any MMORPG, bar none. Yeah, just amazing. The period of time it would take to care for and then have a birth, and then you would have to raise that animal and breed it with another animal to get an animal that's yet a little bit better, and you do this multiple times out to multiple tiers in order, so like a 5th generation horse, which would take 3-6 months, probably more like 6 months, in Worm Online to create, is going to be the ultimate horse if you manage to breed those traits that you're looking for into it. It's not something that you could just snap your fingers and do. But with that being said, yeah, just an amazing complex animal husbandry system. Worm Online, bar none. There's no system like it. Next, what do you need in a good MMO? What's probably the most important thing that there is in any MMO? It's its economy, the ability to make money. In real life, what is the goal of 50% of the people out there? They're trying to get rich, right? Money is the source of all evil. Money is the source of all power in our real life world. And indeed, inside of a computer-generated world, the economy and money should, of course, be just as paramount. And so with that being said, Ultima Online's vendors were the best vendors to ever be in a video game. It's amazing how so many things way back in 1997 were so much better than anything that's been done since. And this is just another one of those examples. Ultima Online's vendors, which you could fully customize. You could dress them in any way you wanted, because you could take any piece of clothing and you could dye it any color you wanted with a simple dye tub, and you could make your vendors appear and look and hold whatever you wanted. You could make them look just like you. You could make them look like a nurse. You could make them look like a warrior. You could make them representative of what they were selling. So Worm Online vendors were just amazing in what you could accomplish and what you could sell. You could sell one item. You could sell a group of items in a pouch, bagged up as a set. So if you wanted to sell a set of armor, you could do it with the UO vendor system. If you just wanted to sell your armor piece by piece, you could do it with that system. So many games since then have not given you anywhere near the flexibility that UO gave you so long ago with their vendors to be able to sell stuff and do so in just a flawless fashion. Next, something very, 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 very important inside of an MMORPG is housing. Now, I want to use Worm Online's housing. And why do I want to use Worm Online's housing? Because Worm Online's housing allows you to build what you want. It's wall by wall, piece by piece, door by door. It's not just a house. Like you buy a house and you place a house. No, You build the whole thing step by step by step. But what does Worm Online housing system also incorporate? It's the way in which they protect the housing utilizing a token system. Or Shadowbane said something similar way back in the day with the Tree of Life. And also, having that token system would then also affect how much decay therein that house would take, depending on the stats of the person that built it and the quality of resources the person used to build it. You could even build something without being on a tokened area, without being in a community, just out in the wild. And if you have really good crafting skill and really good resources, that thing is going to take far, far longer to decay and eventually fall down than as if some novice were to build it without any skills or not the proper resources. Worm Online's housing is an impeccable system. And I'm going to say a lot of these systems are great because they really are. So yeah, Worm Online's housing would be thrown into my perfect MMO. Next up, Taming. Many of you might be thinking of Ark's Taming, but Ark's Taming, well, is a bit cheesy compared to Ultima Online's. Ultima Online had true taming system with a true taming skill, and a true mastery of taming allowed you to truly tame the greatest tames. I will take Ultima Online's taming skill and its plethora of things to tame over just about any other taming system that's ever come since. Ark might be the only close comparison to Ultima Online and its taming system. But there was just something amazing about Ultima Online's taming system. And yeah, taming is a must in an MMORPG. So many MMORPGs just kind of avoid the whole issue of taming or don't put it in. But a good MMORPG should not avoid putting in any system. The more systems you can put into it, the more things that don't involve combat, the better. And now another system that Ultima Online did well is their system of barding. In fact, there's been very few games ever since then that has been able to figure out how to utilize a magical instrument to play a guitar or a lute or whatever for the purposes of doing combat. Ultima Online did it. You used to bard, and while you were barding, you could provoke that Etten over there to attack that orc, and you could watch them beat the crap out of each other as you were playing your musical instrument. That was an amazing feature. Bards, such a cool concept that really hasn't been done since, would be in my perfect MMO. Atlantica Online's arena/gambling system. There was something that I loved about a match, a gladiatorial type match being performed for the masses every so many hours, in which you watched the same combatants you were used to watching who had tendencies to beat each other, but it never went the exact same way. Some of the combatants would usually beat other combatants, but every now and then they'd throw you for a loop and they would overcome their nemesis that they were bad at. And you would sit there and watch it like watching a horse race, and you would bet on it. And while online gambling might not be a great thing, but it's something other than combat. And it really became an interesting pastime for me in Atlantica Online, was to bet on these gladiatorial type arena matches. even if you didn't bet on them, they were just fun to watch. Um, and that most definitely would have to be in my perfect MMO, because that is another thing you can do that isn't just mindless combat or questing. Um, Atlas's shipbuilding. This might come as a surprise, as Atlas is pretty much one of the worst games I've ever played, but the physical mechanics of building a ship inside of the game of Atlas is really good. Too bad the game and everything about the game is pretty horrible, but the shipbuilding itself, if you just take those mechanics out and put it into my game, it would fit. It would fit beautifully in my perfect MMO, because I wouldn't have an MMO based around a mindless Rust type PvP experience where there's nothing but griefing. Ultima Online's dungeons. Now, why Ultima Online's dungeons when they didn't have any raid bosses? They were open world dungeons that anybody could go into. Well, because they were open world dungeons that anybody could go into. Ultima Online's dungeons were scaled in a way that a single player could handle them just fine. But the worst thing you could beat in the Ultima Online dungeon was the player looking to kill you. Ultima Online's dungeon, and being that they weren't instants, meant that the player could find you. But they weren't small dungeons, they were big, large, multi-storied, multi-leveled, lots of different spawns, lots of different places within these dungeons in which you could find an area that you liked to farm, be it, you wanted to kill liches for their reagents, or you wanted to kill these guys for the coin they dropped, or you wanted to kill those guys because they gave good XP for your mounts that you're taming or something. Maybe you were training a new nightmare that you recently tamed. Things of that nature. So, yeah, Ultima Online's dungeons I would far prefer over the quote-unquote recent MMO idea of raids and instance dungeons that World of Warcraft has spawned as a constant. I don't like those. I don't enjoy those. Not for me. Best gear should come from crafters, not from some raid boss. Worm Online's farming. Now, Worm Online did animal husbandry so well, and it also did farming so incredibly well. The process of having to rake out the weeds and maintain your crops on a daily basis, and having so many various different crops that had actual useful uses for it. Worm Online did farming excellently. Farming, everybody's like, what do you want to farm in an MMO for? Because it's not frickin' mindless combat. It's something more than. It's part of a life simulator. And Worm Online's farming is excellent. Very well done. Alright, something more combat-oriented. Shadowbane's siege system. Yes, siege systems are a very important part of an MMORPG. Because in an MMORPG, you will eventually have conflict. Peace will not always reign supreme. There will be politics and there will be disputes. And you will have to settle said disputes. And the best way to do so is through a logical siege system in which the aggressor places the siege and the defender sets the time. And then within a 72-hour window, the battle happens. This means that you actually have a fight where people actually show up to it. Not, oh, hey, let's go siege this. Hope the enemy doesn't show up in the next couple of hours. And then we'll loot and grief their stuff. Hey, it'll be fun. They won't even be around to stop us like Ark or games of that nature. No, we need a proper siege system done properly, and Shadowbane set the mark on how to do sieges right. Now, going more into the fighting and PvP oriented stuff, I would put in WoW's battlegrounds into my perfect MMO. I would like places like Alterac Valley and Warsong Gulch to be a part of my perfect MMO because it would give the more hostile elements something to do. It would give them a place to hone their martial abilities in a manner that isn't just mindless. And yes, they should earn rewards for winning these matches. There should be PvP gear. There should be Grand Marshal status. There should be Grand Marshal gear. I fully supported that. That was some of my favorite parts about World of Warcraft. I had 90,000 kills as a druid. I ran the flag back in Warsong Gulch all the time. I mean that was my jam, because there wasn't much else to do in World of Warcraft. It was such a horrible theme park oriented game. There wasn't much life to live. The fishing was pretty good though. I did like the fishing. But anyway, WoW's Battlegrounds could find a home in my perfect MMO. Now, back to Ultima Online again. In Ultima Online, they had rares. And what rares were they were actually a glitch. They were things that were in the world that were not supposed to be lootable, but turned out they were lootable. And every time the server would reset, because the server would reset every night, these rares would be in the world again, ready to be grabbed. And of course, it became quite the competition for some folks to try to nab these rares, and some rares were more sought after than others, but there were lots of them. There were like 40 or 50 different server rares that would happen every time the server would go up and down. And then there were some rares that were not just server rares, they were rares that happened at a different time frame, and you rarely were able to come across them, but they did happen. And those were like the ultra rares, and they sold for a lot of money. And having rares and ultra rares and things like that are good in a game with a solid economy, because it gives your uber rich something to do with their money, to throw their money at. And it also allows you to decorate your house and show off your status. These are good things inside of an MMORPG. Shadowbane's politics. Shadowbane had incredible politics in that you could form a guild, and your guild could swear fealty to another guild. And that guild could swear fealty to yet another guild. And in doing so, you would create a feudal architecture. You would create, without even realizing it, dukes and kings by how you sweared your fealty. And the politics therein worked, and they worked well. There hasn't been a lot of games since that has done politics so well as Shadowbane did. Shadowbane had politics down to a science, and Crowfall will probably be the next game to have politics down to a science, seeing as it's being made by the same people, and they're putting the same type of effort into that particular area of the game. But yeah, I would like Shadowbane's politics inside of my perfect MMO. This next feature is going to sound a bit strange. It's going to be a feature I want taken from a single-player game. This will be the first single-player game feature that I want thrown into my perfect MMORPG, and that's the Guild's crime system. So I don't know if you've ever played this single-player game of the Guild, but you could become different officers within the town, and you could go and sit in judgment, maybe even be the judge who's presiding over the proceedings. I want that type of thing within the towns of my perfect MMO. I want people to vie politically for these officer positions, and one of their responsibilities is then to sit in judgment of people who are accused of crimes and to pass judgment on them. That would be awesome. Ultima Online's karma system. So this kind of goes along with the guild's crime system. I also want a karma system. So having the crime system, that could be abused a bit. You know, you could have a couple of your buddies up there as the judge, just out of happenstance, or maybe they're usually the judges, and so you act like a schmuck because you know they're going to be presiding over your fate because they keep winning the position, and so now you're a PK that has an in with your judges that are going to let you off the hook every time, and that can be abused. But you can't abuse karma. Karma will tell you you're a schmuck. It will point out that you're a villainous schmuck, and it will be on display for everyone to see that you are a killer, a thief, a hoodlum. And there's no way around the karma system because it's a game mechanic. You do bad things, you earn negative karma points. You do good things, you earn positive karma points. And there is no lying your way through that. And that would definitely have to be in my perfect MMO. Because my perfect MMO needs to have law and order, not anarchy. PKing and killing should happen, because in my perfect MMO, everybody is in the same server. There is no PvE servers, there's no PvP servers. It's everyone together. And if you decide that you're going to kill that person, you must wreak the consequences of your actions. If you're going to become a killer, there are going to be consequences for you becoming a killer, and you're not going to like them. So killing is not going to become commonplace. But if you do decide that you need to settle a dispute because there's no way around it, you still have that option. A good person can still slay the annoying schmuck that's dragging mobs on him while he's trying to mine, and he's being a complete douche. You could take the law in your own hands, and you can kill him. You don't make a habit of killing people. This is just something you did because the guy was deserving of it, and so you'll take a karma hit. You'll lose some prestige, whatnot. You will be a criminal for a little while, but you won't be a criminal anywhere near as long as you would be if this is your normal behavior. And the end results of that aren't going to be anywhere near as severe as if it's your normal behavior. And so I truly believe that a good MMORPG needs to have a proper law and order system inside of it, to allow for all playstyles to play together in the same sandbox. And finally, my perfect MMO would be a subscription-based MMO. Maybe $7.99 or $9.99. Not too expensive, but expensive enough to keep the servers running, to make some money for the people maintaining the servers, and or maybe providing more content in the future, maybe working on expansions. And that way, everyone's on an equal playing field. Everyone pays the same subscription fee. Nobody is paying anything in order to win. Nobody has a super special mount that they could have only purchased with their real life money. All the cool looking stuff that you want to wear, you buy it in game with the same in-game currency everyone else does, so you don't feel like you're being shorted there. A subscription model is the only way the perfect MMO should ever be, Because the perfect MMO, being the perfect MMO, is going to be an MMO everybody's going to want to play. And so, because it's so sought after, everyone will pay the subscription. And because everyone's paying the subscription, you'll be able to update that game and make it better. So this is my perfect MMO. This is what the perfect MMO should be. Did I bring up fishing? I didn't. And in the perfect MMO, there should be amazing frickin' fishing that is kind of like a hybrid of World of Warcraft's fishing. I like that World of Warcraft on Sundays would have the fishing tournaments. That would be in my perfect MMO. I don't like World of Warcraft's little pools of, ooh, this is a hotspot, though. I don't like that. Hotspots should be places that you discover through your personal knowledge of fishing. You've fished so hard and long, and you've discovered that when the sun's high and the weather is a certain way, that this certain type of fish is more commonly found over in this area of the water at this depth. That's the way fishing should be, not in hotspots. So if we could somehow combine a more realistic approach to finding fish, variable sized fish, you don't want to catch the same fish clone over and over again. You want to catch small ones and big ones and huge ones and giant ones that actually have some physical representation of their size in the game. They actually have a stat that, this is so many inches or so many centimeters or whatever your unit of measurement is. And you should be able to mount them. And then there should be use for the stuff that you get from the fish. WoW was good about making fish useful for recipes. Ultima Online was really good about fishing too, in that you could catch stuff that was unique, like a message in a bottle that led to treasure hunting. That's really cool. So I would combine kind of WoW's fishing and Ultima Online's fishing together with a more realistic version of fishing that actually has variable lengths to the fish and trophies that you can mount on your wall. That would be a great fishing experience, and that would need to be in my perfect MMO, because my perfect MMO is more of a life simulator than, and it should never, ever, ever be considered with the buzzword action combat. No, my perfect MMO would be good old-fashioned tab targeting done right. And graphics would need to be at a place that everyone could get into the game. And they would need to be in such a way that they don't become dated. So maybe even isometric. Some quality isometric graphics might be the way to go. Definitely not some anime BS. Definitely not something that's very stylized. I want realistic graphics that will age well, that are lower poly count, that will be easy for me to put tons and tons and tons of content into the game without bogging it down, because you're trying to make it super graphically intensive. And that, my friends, is the perfect MMORPG. Anyway, weigh in. Tell me what you think. Tell me I'm just an old fart who's nuts and will never have an MMO like that. Or tell me, you're right on the money. That's what I've been looking for too, etc., etc. Leave a like, don't leave a like. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this episode, and peace.